Hello, welcome back. So this lecture will focus on real options. Our last lecture went through financial options. We looked at various option strategies depending on your hedging or speculative needs, and we introduced this idea of how investments by bondholders and stockholders can be seen as options on the value of the firm. We're going to take those concepts and apply them to real options. Real options are going to be the ways that managers can use flexibility within their decision making to actually change the NPV analysis of these underlying investments. The best stuff to read for this will be chapter 22. And a really easy way to think about this stuff that's going to get a little bit, hopefully that feels very intuitive, is to think about a movie sequel. So let's do an example. Our net present value, recall, we always have our net present value with the expected cash flow divided by our discount rate, our weighted average cost of capital that we solve for using the CAPM, and we went through asset data and many different ways of calculating and identifying the correct way of estimating our NPV. Now, suppose we find the NPV for a 30-year project, and if it's greater than 0, we say invest. However, 30 years is a long time, and a lot can change during that time. What would happen if your project became somewhat of a failure in year 5, such that you expected to adjust the remaining cash flows downward? It could be worth to just abandon the project entirely. So the NPV on the previous slide, however, does not account for this updating of events. If the project did end up being a bust after 5 years, the flexibility to abandon that project would be very, very valuable. So the real option to abandon the project could be highly valuable if it involved avoiding future losses. What would we be willing to pay for that option today? That's exactly what we'll figure out. What's the value of a real option? So in other words, managerial flexibility is valuable. The flexibility to delay the project, abandon the project, and expand the project, all of these different ways of thinking about it have strong implications for our NPV analysis. So having flexibility is going to be preferred to having no flexibility, meaning a real option will have value. So the ability to adapt to this new information will be very valuable. Examples of real options. So on the previous slide, we said that a case study of these real options is basically movie sequels. And a good way to think about this is that if you have a movie franchise, and let's say the first film is popular, you might expect that you'll do a second. If the second is popular, you might expect to do a third. So you see this a lot with movie sequels. And the same thing happens if you have a movie sequel that's planned. But let's say the first movie ends up being a flop or disappoints, then very quickly you'll hear how the second and third movies have been abandoned. So some other examples. One that we'll go through in our lectures will be focused on KFC. So they have a sandwich, their Double Down sandwich, which they test in different markets, and they'll use the option to expand it to other markets if the results are positive. Microsoft has done this with Bing. And you see this a lot with different company investments. More generally, you can have a negative NPV project that's justified as a strategic investment. These often will be valued as real options that give you the ability to expand or to basically learn about a market. So greenfield investments overseas oftentimes will fall into this profile, where you'll have a negative NPV investment, but it actually is a strategic investment, meaning that the firm is exercising a real option. Let's do an example. You can invest in a project either now or next year. If it is successful, you get an expected cash flow of $50 million the following year. If it is unsuccessful, you get an expected cash flow of $10 million the following year. The project costs $20 million and has a discount rate of 10%. The chance of success is 50-50. What is the NPV of the project if you invest today? So go ahead and pause and calculate it. If you wait a year, you'll know whether the project will be successful. The chance of success is still 50%. What is the NPV today of the project if you decide to wait for a year? So you'll see in the uploaded slides, in the uploaded solutions, how valuable it is to wait. So what is the value of the option to wait? The value of the option to wait, hopefully we'll see when you do the math, will be way more profitable if we wait. Okay, example 2. KFC decides to introduce the Double Down sandwich nationwide. There's a 50% chance the nation will love it and 50 they'll hate it. There's a 60% chance the economy is good and a 40% chance the economy is bad. The expansion will produce cash flows for 10 years starting next year and cost $150 million when the expansion begins. If the nation likes it and the economy is good, we get $50 million a year. If the nation likes it and the economy is bad, we get $30 million a year. If the nation hates it and we have a good economy, we get $25 million a year. And if the nation hates it and we have a bad economy, we get $15 million a year for the next 10 years. What is the present value of future cash flows in each state? So the first thing we're going to do is calculate the present value of our future cash flows across these good states and these bad states, across a good economy and a bad economy. Assume that we have a beta of 1.5 and the risk-free rate is 3% and the market risk premium is 7%. Given that information, we can very easily calculate the appropriate discount rate. Suppose that after we've calculated, so pause and go ahead and calculate the present value of future cash flows and calculate the NPV of the project. Suppose instead that KFC decides to hire a market research firm. By doing the research, they would find out whether the nation likes or dislikes the sandwich before choosing to expand nationwide. We're still uncertain about the economy when we release the sandwich, but we know that this research will take 1 year. So the first of those 10 cash flows is going to begin in 2 years. What is the present value at T1 of the expected future cash flows if the market research says the sandwich is good? So if the market says the sandwich is good across the good state of the economy and the bad state of the economy, what is the present value at T1 of those expected future cash flows? Would you invest at T1? What is the present value at T1 of the expected future cash flows if market research says the sandwich is not good? So across the good state of the economy and the bad state of the economy, if market research says that they don't like the sandwich, what's going to be our expected future cash flow? Would you invest at T1? So after you've calculated the present value of expected future cash flows, calculate the NPV and let me know if you would invest at T1. What is the overall NPV of the project today at time T0 were you to do market research? For now, assume the market research is free. So when we calculate this, we'll have the NPV across the good state of the economy, the bad state of the economy, and across all of these different, they like the sandwich or they don't like the sandwich. What is the maximum you'd be willing to pay for this market research today? Hopefully what we'll find once we calculate this out is that with waiting, we actually have the ability to increase the NPV of the project. That was an example of a real option to delay a project. We saw that the NPV of the project without the delay was much lower than the NPV of the project with the delay. Pending that the marketing firm, doesn't charge us too much for the research, we would wait. If the marketing firm had all the bargaining power and they informed us of the project if we go forward today versus if we wait, they would actually charge us the value add of having that option. They would charge us the difference in NPV. So notice that we exercise our option to invest when the expected present value at time T of the future cash flows is $223.42 million. And hopefully that makes intuitive sense. You'll exercise your option when you expect it to be profitable. However, we do not exercise our option to invest when the expected present value at time t of our cash flows is 111.71 million. Why? Well, that's less than our cost of 150 million at time t1. So what is this? The option to delay is the present value. If the present value of future cash flows is greater than the cost, then we're going to exercise the option to invest. If the present value of future cash flows is less than the cost, then we do not exercise the option to invest at time t1. If there were a hypothetical case where the market slightly enjoyed the product, and this implied expected future cash flows at time t equal 1 of 150 million, we would break even if we made the investment. So this very much resembles a call option. Why? Okay. On our horizontal axis, we have the expected payoff from our cash flows. And on our vertical axis, we have the payoff from exercising our actual option. Okay, so we can notice the present value of our expected cash flows. Now, in our example, once we hit 150, so that was if they slightly enjoyed the sandwich, we would break even. When we calculated under the scenario where the sandwich was liked, we had a present value of expected future cash flows of 223.42 million, and the payoff from exercising this option, that was our NPV. So hopefully this makes intuitive sense. Okay, the real option to abandon. So abandonment is another type of real option. This is a way that firms mitigate losses all the time. So a firm has the option of simply walking away from a project. You abandon a project because you really want to save value and you want to stop losing money on a project. So example 3, you decide to invest in a hockey stick factory and are under contract to produce hockey sticks. The factory will produce cash flows for 11 years, starting in 2 years. Each stick will sell for 200 and has a variable cost of 180 per stick. The fixed cost of operating the factory every year is 1.5 million. That also starts in 2 years. So let's make sure we understand the setup. Every stick you sell, you earn 200 bucks. What it's going to cost you, your cost of goods sold, will be 180. There's a fixed cost of operating the factory that's going to be 1.5 million. So every time you turn on a key to produce a hockey stick, you're going to have to pay 1.5 million for the year in order to operate it. We have 3 states of the world. We have one state of the world in which the demand for hockey sticks is low. So we're only going to be able to sell 50,000 hockey sticks with a probability of 25%. We have a medium state of the world where we sell 100,000 hockey sticks. That's going to occur with a probability of 50%. We have a high state of the world where the demand is high and we sell 200,000 hockey sticks with a probability of 25%. You'll learn what the yearly demand will be in year 1, and this demand will remain fixed for the life of the project. So what are we going to do? What is the net present value of the expected cash flows from your operations? Assume a discount rate of 10%. So in our classic examples, we're going to take the probabilities across these states of the world. And then to set this up, we've got our revenue, so our 200 minus our 180 multiplied by our demand. So in the example of the low state of the world, that's 200 minus 180 multiplied by our 50,000. And then you have to account for that 1.5 million fixed costs. So we'll do that same calculation across all the states of the world to find the net present value given a discount rate of 10% of this expected hockey stick problem. Suppose that you have the option in year 1 of learning what the yearly demand will be but now you can abandon the operation. You can sell the factory for $5 million. What is the net present value of operations with this abandonment option? So when we calculate this, what we'll observe is that for 2 states of the world, it'll be worthwhile to just abandon the project, to sell it off. After you've calculated it, create a T=1 payoff diagram for the abandonment option with the present value of future cash flows if the project is taken on the x-axis, and then the payoff from the option on the y. So first, let's look at that payoff diagram. And then a question I want you to answer for yourself is, if you have this option to abandon, but you face a litigation cost of $2 million, is this abandonment option still valuable? What state of the world will this still be valuable? Okay, so let's look at the payoff. Here, we've got the present value of our expected cash flows. So let's make sense of this. Remember, no matter what, we can sell this for $5 million. And then here we have the payoff for our option. So in the worst state of the world, we're going to have an expected present value of future cash flows of negative $3.25 million. And because we get to sell for $5 million, we know that for a put option, the payoff is going to be K minus ST. Well, our strike price is $5 million, and our ST, our underlying value of operations, will be negative $3.25 million. So that's how we get our expected payoff of $8.25 million. Same intuition here. So what am I doing? I know that I can sell off this factory. I can sell off all my operations for $5 million. Okay, well, the underlying value of my assets in this state of the world, where it's medium, the underlying value from operations of cash flows is $3.25 million. So my $5 million minus my $3.25 million gets me my $1.75 million, the expected payoff from exercising my put option. And we can see here that any state of the world in which the value is greater than that $5 million, I'm not going to use it. So this is really similar to buying a put option. The abandonment option resembles longing a put option. Real investments are super important. After the financial crisis in 2008, there was a lot of waiting from firms. Investors faced a lot of uncertainty about the future direction of the economy. Why make an investment now when you have the real option to delay the investment for another year? So we saw this behavior then, and we see a lot of this behavior in response to COVID, where firms basically take a wait and see approach to see how things will resolve. Many decisions in real life are based on this real options framework. So you can think about this when you think about going to university, you think about buying a car, buying a house, and also with your spousal decisions, the decision to get married, delay it another year. If you delay that decision, you accumulate more options, you accumulate more information, and hopefully you get a better idea about the payoff, but delaying may also have a cost, right? So we tend to think about these real options all the time in real life, and they have many applications, both within finance and within our actual lives. Okay, so hopefully we understand how net present value may underestimate the true value of a project when a real option exists. We looked at the option to expand, the option to abandon, and the option to delay. Real options are valuable because they present the ability to adapt to new information. Strategic considerations of firms is usually a sort of real life corollary, a real life one-for-one of this real option example. I'm going to add on Blackboard an article that talks more about these real options. If this is something that you're interested in, feel free to read. It's not going to be required. Okay. Our next lecture will focus on part 2 of the course, which will be dividend policy.